And the final slide does have our contact information, and we would absolutely love to hear from you. As well, our websites are listed there, westcoastleaf.org. If you go there, you can't miss, again, the link to our legal handbook, Roads to Safety, right on the first page. So we hope you'll spread the word far and wide, and you'll likely hear from us later as we're going to be promoting this resource and making sure the word gets out. But it is about just about 10 minutes to the time we'll wrap up, so we'd love to take some time for questions. So does anyone have questions? I see that there are a few here. Okay. Is it okay with you, Krista and Yannicka, if I just read out the questions? So this one is, if a woman wants to separate from her husband and they live in the same house and she does not feel safe and no order is being provided due to not believing her risk, so this I guess relates to protection orders and peace bonds, so she doesn't have one in place, what are her options? What can she do? So I'll just make sure that Yannicka's speaker is on. All right, Yannicka, you're able to answer the question if you wish, and if you need me to repeat it, I'm happy to do that.
Can you repeat that again? I'll try to type you a message. Can you type? Yeah,
okay.
Yannicka.
Yeah, so the question is, if a woman wants to separate from her husband and they live in the same house, she doesn't feel safe, and no order is being provided due to not believing her risk, what can she do? So I guess this question speaks to the reality that not all women are in a position to leave their homes. Some women don't make that choice, and regardless, they still have legal rights and options and perhaps resources they can access to increase their safety, though they may be living in a dangerous situation. Any specific points to bring out about that?
I can speak to a little bit of that. Hi, it's Yannicka here. It quite often happens, especially with people that are feeling that they don't have any voice for whatever reason, they're vulnerable for whatever reason, including being an elderly woman, maybe being an immigrant, not really knowing your rights. It's one of the difficulties in court. Court needs to have the evidence before it's going to make an order for protection. And it's sort of a cart before the horse sometimes situation. So I always advise people to start keeping notes of what's happening in the home, keeping any kind of evidence that they can, collecting sort of their financial information and so on, so that maybe, I mean, if they're not feeling safe, they need to leave and go to a safe house. But if that, or family member or something, other family member or something like that, but to try and gather the evidence. And something else I always do is try to give them as many phone numbers that can be helpful to them in maybe a business card form or something that they can keep on them in the case of an emergency, not just 911 of course, but other numbers that they can, if they are in a place that they feel, okay, I really have to call somebody and now's the time to get the help, to keep that kind of information on them. And in very extreme situations, I've actually suggested that they empty out a lipstick holder and put it, because nobody's going to go in there.
Those are great points, Yannicka, and I think hopefully our wallet-sized resource will be nice and compact and discreet, and we'll list some of those key numbers where an older woman can go to find out about her options or maybe engage in some safety planning that's tailored to her specific situation.
Hey, Alana, one thing that I might add, this is Krista, is that often it's worthwhile to unpack why, there are lots of reasons why someone might not be willing to leave forever, or at least in the short term, but often it's worthwhile to unpack with the woman why she is not reluctant to leave the home in order to make herself safe. And what we often find with older women is they're unwilling to leave because they're a caregiver for their abuser or for someone else in the family, a partner or an adult child. And what my understanding is, what elder abuse detachments have often found is that once they support a woman to make sure caregiving or other services are put in place to help the person who's actually harming them, then they are a lot more comfortable with temporarily leaving the home in order to make sure they are physically safe.
Thanks for that, Krista. I have another question. So what if the police will not give you a peace bond? So any other options or any strategies to increase the likelihood of obtaining a peace bond?
Do you want me to speak to that?
Sure, if you're able.
Okay. Definitely. First of all, please don't give the peace bond. you have to go to court. A person has to be arrested. The perpetrator has to be arrested and put on either a undertaking or sometimes bail conditions or something like that. And it's only when the Crown has sufficient information of a crime that it will go to court, and then a peace bond can be considered. So the document that's prior to the peace bond is whatever the police decide to have that person under, usually an undertaking with conditions not to go to a particular home or not to have contact with a particular person. If the police don't find that there's sufficient evidence for that again, it is possible I would then go to duty counsel or to a lawyer if that person can afford it and try to get a protection order under the Family Act. Mm-hmm. But it has to be a family member that's then causing the risk.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, and in our legal handbook, Roads to Safety, we give a rundown of the very particular way that the Family Law Act defines a family member. So there are sort of a whole list of individuals who might be covered, including the other parent or guardian of your child, whether or not you live with them or ever have, a family member who lives with you, and there's a list that's outlined quite clearly in the handbook there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There was a case recently where a child was actually, the child was harming the parent, mm-hmm. was found to be a family member.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, which can definitely introduce a lot of complexity, and as Krista said, can be really important to think about how to get supports if a woman has a close relationship with and cares very much about the person who's harming her, as is often the case, to think about supports for that individual too, which might make it easier to think about options of getting safer or leaving. So we're almost out of time. We might have a moment for one more question if there is another, or if not, we'll wrap up and I'll explain kind of the next steps. Is there any other question? Okay, I'm not receiving any other questions right now. So I will just thank you so much all for attending, and I will mention that there will be an automatic feedback survey that will pop up automatically when you complete today's webinar. So we ask that you take just 2 minutes to fill that out. It's extremely helpful for us to make sure that we're meeting people's needs with our public legal education and our webinar. It will list topics and ask, which topics you found valuable. Some of them are covered next day, so don't worry about that. You can just speak to any topics that we addressed today, and the same survey will pop up next time as well. And we just encourage you to absolutely keep in touch with us. Our email addresses are provided, our websites are there too, and we would love to hear from you, and we do encourage you to get your PDF version of Roads to Safety and spread the word, because we think it's a valuable resource, and we hugely thank all the many service providers and older women who contributed their expertise to make that resource what it is. And huge thanks to Jannica for being with us today, and to Krista, and we'll look forward to meeting you all again in a week's time.
Thanks very much for having me on.
Thank you so much, Jannica.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll look forward to next week, and please keep in touch. Bye-bye.